With this video, I'm going to try my best to answer the question, is religion good for you? While simultaneously offering an alternative to religious belief. What can I say? I love my high-level ideas. Just a heads up, this video is intended for both religious people and non-believers alike. Throughout this video, I'm going to be referring to religion and specifically the Christian faith, because Christianity is the religion I am most familiar with. With that said, I'm writing this specifically in a way that all the points I make about Christianity can be applied to other religions. Hopefully. I know this comes with the territory, and you're probably wondering whether or not I believe in a God and what my own personal beliefs are. Well, let's save that to the end. Also, throughout this video, I'm going to be giving my personal testimony and experience about organized religion. I'm going to be mentioning people and specific organizations, but in the name of privacy, I'm going to be leaving the people and specific organizations unnamed. Finally, with this video, I'm going to be covering some pretty uncomfortable stuff. If you find topics like Christian homophobia, sexual misconduct, and pedophilia uncomfortable, maybe tread lightly with this one. Alright, sweet, let's get into it. Let's do this shit. Wait, no one's gonna take me seriously if I don't wear my glasses. I'm gonna save the West! Part 1. Father? Is that you? From the ages of 1 to 4, I was raised Christian. It was never enforced upon me, it was just a little family tradition that I didn't really think much about. Like a lot of families in the Western world, Christianity and casually going to church was a cultural touchstone. Mum, dad, and my big sister and I would once a week go to this beachside church. Basic stuff, nothing too extreme here. You sit down and you listen to old white people talk about stuff, and then you drink tea and eat biscuits. Classic nuclear family kind of stuff. I didn't really think much about it. I just took everything that was given and had my fun. After a while, as my mother, sister, and I got older, we kind of lost interest and stopped going. My dad, till this day, still goes. While I didn't really care much, I was mostly there because it was just, I was young and my family I just went along with my family, not really giving it a lot of thought back then. A lot of stuff that was taught to me and was reiterated there did stick with me. Ever since I was little, I was always enamored with this idea of a divine heavenly father. Isaiah 41 chapter 10. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous hand. I don't know about you, but for me personally, that's a really comforting notion. The idea that there is some bloke out there floating on a cloud who is always watching out for you and always helping you, it's nice. It helps you feel less alone, in my opinion. Growing up, I never really had the traditional father figure, you would say, that transcendental masculine papa, if you would. My father never really spent much time with me growing up. He didn't really install any values or anything in me. Apart from the basic stuff, don't kill anyone, be nice, respect people. Growing up, I never really got the sense of who he was. Apart from his performative kindness, it was kind of neglectful. When I was little, my father spent most of his time working. When he did have his time off, he spent most of it in his room or in front of the telly. He didn't really spend much time with his kids or do anything with me and my sis. I guess at the end of the day, we don't have anything in common or share hobbies to do together. My father wasn't really there for me and my sister. From what I gather from talking to my aunties and grandma, this is due to his own upbringing. My grandfather, his dad, granddad, from what I gather, was very strict. From what I understand, from what I hear, granddad was a traditional 1960s boomer Aussie patriarch of the family. Really authoritarian, short-tempered. For the little time I knew my granddad, this adds up. I was distant from him as well. I don't know about him much either. Granddad died when I was 8. And I never really knew him that well. But yeah, I kind of get that vibe. What I'm assuming when it came around to my own father, when he wanted to raise his kids, he wanted to be the father that he never had. So that's why he let his children do whatever they want and didn't really go out of his way to instill any values in us or do any of that real dad energy parenting. I can't really fault him for that. I guess he did what he thought was best. Evidently, his best wasn't that good, and it's not really what I needed or wanted. At the end of the day, he's still my father, and even if we don't talk about it, we still love each other, I guess, in our weird, emotionally detached way. If you're wondering how my father looks, here's a photo. Trust me, this is really funny if you know how he looks in real life. He genuinely looks like the NPC meme. The classical liberal conservative preset number 4. Part 2. The Culture War. Atheists versus creationists. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. A wise philosopher by the name of Jesus once said, "What's a king to a god? What's a god to a king? And what's a god to a non-believer who don't believe in anything?" Bars. For those who don't know or don't remember, let me give you a quick refresher. Cast your mind back to a pre-Gamergate world and internet, before 2014. Let me really set the picture for you. A young pixel hipster rages on in the culture war. 13 years... Fuck. A young pixel hipster rages on in the culture war. 13 years old, an absolute mad lad on the 4chan boards, constantly consuming forum after forum, shitpost after shitpost. I've always been kind of a dumb fuck edgy boy. I like memes, okay? For those who don't know, the big internet debate of that era was that of atheists versus creationists. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking I went through a bit of an edgy atheist phase. But I wasn't on the side that you think I was. At that time, I was a born-again evangelical Christian. Yes, I am not shitting you. I was a Christian, baptized and everything. I know that's fucking hilarious, especially for anyone who knows me in real life. That's pretty funny, considering the absolute decadent slut I am today. But yes, at one point in my life, a few years ago, I was a Christian. Back at the beginning of 2014, my childhood best mate had invited me to a Easter camp. For those who aren't Aussie, an Easter camp is in Easter time, you kind of go camping in a forest. There's like cabins, games, food, activities, and stuff like that. Sometimes it's like religious and sometimes it's not. We have them in primary school, some churches host them and community centers hold them. Anyway, I really enjoyed going to this Easter camp. And after it was over, the church people who hosted it invited me to come to their congregation. And I guess from there, it just kind of became a natural part of my life. It was something I never talked about with people. I hated talking about it with people. I didn't really tell anyone in my school that I was religious, but it was something that as a teen boy consumed my every waking minute of my reality. I kind of just took Christian belief as the default and never really thought about any other perspectives. I never really thought of it as political, just personal. Even though I spent a lot of time online reading and watching debates between atheists and creationists, because the whole discussion and ideas were very captivating to me, I always thought, hey, religion and Christianity is just like the Force from Star Wars. It just works. Who cares? Don't worry about it. No need to prove it with facts or whatever. It just works. For a while, it was really good for me. I felt as if I was being a better person. At this point, it wasn't like I was forced to go by my parents or anyone else. I went by my own volition, and I enjoyed it. I liked it. The sense of community and security. I liked those feelings. It was like a family away from my actual family. It was cathartic to once a week go and see my life group, a people who I cared about a lot and cared about me a lot. Having fellowship and that sense of community and security. Venting out your feelings and telling your peers your problems and thoughts. Being told I was good and life was going to be alright is nice. I liked listening to sermons about how we should be grateful for the life He gave us and make the most of it. Improve yourself, clean your room, be kind to one another, feeling virtuous. Communion, enjoying the creation He made, the nature of the world, the earth, all that hippie shit. I loved all of that wholesome stuff, but most importantly, and to me personally, in church and in Christ, I found that father figure that I wanted and that was solely lacking from my life. In religious belief of Jesus and God or community or fellowship or what have you, as well as the older male father figures there, pastors and life group leaders and stuff like that. Part 3.
I don't care whether I have anything but Christ.
So this happy Christian fun time lasted for about 2 years or so. It was around 2016, early 2017, the third year of Pixel Hipster's Jesus Brain Fun Time, where things began to change. If you're wondering why, well, it's because of the whole guilt-ridden oriented rhetoric, celibacy, and homophobia really began to push me away from the church. For those who don't know what was happening politically in 2017 and 2016, Australia was holding a plebiscite to legalise gay marriage. That was the hot topic back then.
Australia is holding a plebiscite on whether to legalise gay marriage. I'm against the Yes campaign, but only because it's backed by cultural Marxists. I'm curious to hear your views on gay marriage. Well, I would be against it too if it was backed by cultural Marxists.
Who are the cultural Marxists, Jordan? What are you talking about? Are you talking about the Jews? Are you talking about the Jews, Jordan?
Yep, that one. The very real cultural Marxist movement to make gay people have the basic human rights as everyone. Anyway, moving over the points that cultural Marxism is an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory created by the literal fucking Nazis, the whole Yes campaign versus the religious fundamentalism debate back then over legalizing gay marriage in Australia got really weird. The mental gymnastics for some conservatives in the No campaign were absolutely insane.
Australia's Safe School Coalition pushes radical left-wing sexual ideology dressed up as an anti-bullying program to over 300 Australian schools.
The protection of parental rights and religious freedoms and freedom of speech.
In my opinion, our right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion is way too important to have any level of uncertainty over, and a yes vote at this point in time will mean uncertainty over freedom of religion, freedom of speech, as well as parental rights, as ex-Prime Minister John Howard explains.
Fucking neck yourself, you bogan cunt. What the fuck are you talking about? Smooth brain fucking homophobe. For those who don't know my position on LGBT rights and stuff like that, I am pro degeneracy. I am all for the gay rights, all the gays. You know, hashtag trans rights, trans femoids are femoids, all the gay rights. Make everyone gay, I say. In all seriousness, this has always been my position, even when I was religious. This is actually one of the few rare things my father did instill with me. I honestly think he just taught me to respect gay people because I think my dad thought I was gay as well. But anyway, over the course of that year, the church drastically shifted. This place I once upheld as a place of kindness had degenerated into something unrecognizable. And towards the end, I could no longer willingly endorse that. Church was no longer about forgiveness, kindness, or improvement. It was all about guilt and sin. The cracks in my worldview started out small, with questions and disagreements from me. Christian celibacy was something I was confused about, and I didn't like the idea of. They would spend hours lecturing me about how sex before marriage is immoral. And as a horny boy, now and back then, who likes to get around, I didn't understand the big deal. If you think about it, Christian celibacy was the original Volcel NoFap movement. Anyway, I was constantly reiterated to about how Western relativism is destroying the planet and global warming was the devil's plan and needed to be fought against, and the West was failing and it's up to those who are God's chosen people who are set apart to fight against the oncoming sin. I was told I just needed to shut up and blindly follow like a sheep. And for anyone who has been to church, you know that is a reoccurring motif. The idea of the shepherd and the sheep, and how we're all sheep, and everyone needs to follow the shepherd, which is Jesus and the people in charge of the church. Church became horrible, and I didn't feel happy there anymore. Going week after week became a chore, and dare anyone not attend or question anything being taught, they would be castrated and put in line. And then, we touched upon it before, the homophobia. Fuck me. Every week became the same thing preached, the same sermon. Gay, bad, the homosexual agenda destroys the West. It destroys marriage, vote no. People from church would take the day off work and use weekends to go out on the street giving out anti-gay pamphlets, going out to random people to try and convince them to vote no. They asked me to do shit like that, and it made me really uncomfortable. I never did it. For the record. I was so morally repulsed by the idea. Even as a Christian, I always consider myself quite progressive. And now this next one gets a bit personal. So heads up. I mentioned previously about the father figure stuff I had at church. I'm going to try and leave this part as anonymous as I can, in the name of privacy. One of my church father figure dudes was what the Christian community called a reformed gay. Basically, someone who was once gay but through church brainwashing had become changed. And he would make testimonies about his experience and everyone would hold him up as a success story. And over time, I would get kind of appalled by this because I knew him personally and I kind of looked up to him. And I knew that he was miserable, that this religious belief was making his life worse and he wasn't a success story. And I was so repulsed and uncomfortable by it. And that's me, I'm a cis straight guy. I can only imagine how actual LGBT people feel who have been treated like this in the name of religion. Or LGBT people who have been converted like this in the name of Jesus. It's appalling to me. It was so obvious to me and everyone and most people that because of this repressed Christian shackle, it hurt him and it held him back from who he was and who he wanted to be. And after a while, let's just say his affections came out in weird ways. Like I said, church stopped being about kindness and forgiveness and became about guilt and hatred. It all started to crack and fall apart. They would preach about love and togetherness and the one earth while taking actually no action to save the planet. The only action I could see was to demonize gay people and push people back in line when they had questions. Not only was it hypocritical, there was such malice intent that they refused to recognize. Maybe it was always like this, and it was only me who didn't get it. Maybe I wasn't able to see the red flags because I was looking at everything through rose-tinted glasses. Anyway, that was the final straw, which made me stop believing and giving a shit. 2016 was a pretty awful year for the world and me personally. Part 4. Nihilism, the vapid emptiness. If you have no cultural touchstones with organized religion, or you're just somebody who doesn't care about religion, or is just by existing not really compatible with religious belief, LGBT, trans, and what have you, after listening to what I've testified previously and weighing up the costs and belief, if you're like, fuck that, I hate religion, I don't want to be a part of it, I don't want anything to do with it, I'm not really interested in that cuck kind of community, I don't need it, fair enough, okay? Totally understandable. This is the part of the video where I'm going to offer a philosophical alternative to religious belief. Let me tell you about the philosophy of existential nihilism. While I know here on political YouTube it's a bit of a cliche that most content creators at one point went down an anti-religious, edgy atheist phase, for me it wasn't really like that. After I gave up on Christianity as an edgy teen boy, I had a little existential crisis. Yes, religion doesn't work for me. If God's not real, if God's not good, what is even the point of anything? Am I good? What is good? What is the meaning of life now? Why am I here? Just to suffer. Every night I feel my leg. This pain. You know, life has no meaning. None of this matters. We're all gonna die. You know, that typical basic teen boy angsty shit. Like every glorious Zoomer, to deal with the issues with the world, I turned to YouTube and the good old skeptic community. What fascinated me wasn't really the bargain bin atheist rhetoric, but the philosophies of existentialism, nihilism, absurdism that was sometimes brought up to counteract religion. Obviously, atheism was a gateway here, because atheism and nihilism have a bit of overlap. Let me tell you my piece about how now I see the world. Let me tell you about the philosophers who were very formative in solidifying my current worldview. So where do I begin? Nihilism by itself is not a good thing. It's the rejection of religious and moral principles in the belief that life is meaningless. You know, school shooter, little dick energy. Now, existential nihilism, on the other hand, is fucking dope. Existential nihilism derives itself from the nihilist school of thought, which sees at its core moral values are baseless without proper grounding in mere fiction. In layman's term, God is dead, morality is meaningless, it is up to the individual to craft their own purpose and define their choices. Existential nihilism is the school of thought that I personally agree with a lot. When I lost my faith, existential nihilism helped me rethink my perspective and helped me derive meaning within the world. It's a combination of two things. Existentialism, it's a variety of doctrines from Jean-Paul Sartre to Albert Camus to Friedrich Nietzsche that more or less agreed on the fact that the individual is responsible for their own fate and choices in the universe of unknown intent of their own understanding of what is right or wrong, good or bad. Nihilism, it is the understanding that life has no intrinsic purpose or value, that the current state of morals, values and beliefs are artificial constructs with no foundational basis, and denies that anything is true or claimed to be such. It is essentially the acceptance that not only does life not have no defined purpose, but that the current reality in terms of values, truth and morals are all foundationless, and it is up to the individual to not only define their own purpose within the understanding of their own existence, but to define their own values and morals along their own understanding of existence. Once again, in layman's terms, since life is meaningless suffering, it is up to you to derive meaning for yourself. Think of it as a libertarian view of philosophy. Albert Camus, one of the aforementioned philosophers who is credited in creating and popularizing existential nihilism, has a word to describe the meaninglessness of our existence. He called it the absurd. He said you should live your life in full knowledge of its meaninglessness. What I find so interesting about Albert Camus is that even though he is a nihilist, he never called himself an atheist.
I do not believe in God, and I am not an atheist. For if there is a sin against life, it consists perhaps not so much in despairing of life, as in hoping for another life and in eluding the implacable grandeur of this life. Don't wait for the last judgment. It takes place every day.
I think there is beauty to be found in the vapid meaninglessness of our world. To look into the abyss and for it to stare back at you can't consume you. But looking into the abyss and acknowledging on some level that none of this means anything can give us purpose. I can't say either of these two options, religious belief or existential nihilism, are the two definitive ways to derive meaning and live your life. But for me personally, I can honestly say from the bottom of my heart, at one point in my life, they did. It's up to you if you want. I'm just a guy. Free speech, free speech. Part 5. Conclusion. Is religion good for you? For the past decade, and especially in these dreadful years of resurfacing neoconservatism and traditionalism, the church has gone out of its way to discipline and persecute everyone who disagrees with their line on divorce, birth control, and being gay, while our planet is being completely destroyed and inequality grows like a fucking cancer. As of making this video, my beloved country of Australia is on metaphorical and literal fire. For those who believe in a higher power, let me ask you something real quick. Do you honestly think there's going to be a kingdom of heaven waiting for you as you continually sit back and do nothing as God's creation is burned and ripped apart in front of you? Will he forgive you for destroying the planet? Organized religion actively excludes certain groups of people away from it, hiding behind their walls, their cathedrals, and while the whole time there was and still is a serious danger within their own ranks and out in the real world. People high up in organized religion know about the insidious shit going on in their houses of worship. They still think it's better for children to suffer than millions of believers lose their faith over a scandal or attack, or actually address the problems they claim to preach against. People do a lot of fucked up shit in the name of religion. People become cruel in the name of God. People abuse kids. Fuck, man. People become cruel when you're not what they want you to be. I'm just saying people in that position have a lot of power, and all the historical evidence shows that sometimes they abuse that power. I just want to make the obvious point that there has been a lot of fucked up stuff in the name of religion. Here's a hot take. I don't like kids being raped. I know, wow, as the old 4chan saying goes, lefties love futa and right-wingers love lolly and shorter. If you got that joke, I'm sorry, but if you know what those terms are, you're a degenerate. Oh, and also Nick Fuentes loves having sex with cowboys. Now, there is a clear distinction I'm trying to make here, which I hope you've been able to pick up on. It's the dichotomy of belief versus action. There is a big difference between socially conservative and being politically conservative. Conservative and religious people are famously bad with separating their personal beliefs from their politics. If you're just a socially conservative person who personally wants a white picket fence life, socially going to church, having a sense of community, family security, being religious while still politically being a proponent for liberal and libertarian values, things like freedom, human rights, the right to self-expression, I'm with you. Freedom and equality are core tenets of the West. Egalitarian values are good. I hope everyone agrees on that. I don't think religion in itself is the problem and is evil. Some people are evil who happen to use religion as a scapegoat or a proxy for their terrible beliefs. That's why I find religious people who hold bigoted conservative views so baffling. They're so hateful, it's un-Christ-like. Jesus and God was taught to me, it was said they lived by the mantra, the bigger the sinner, the bigger the mercy. The way Jesus and God was always characterized to me was that they were kind. Jesus was a persecuted minority who helped people, like, come on. Anyone who spent any time in church has John 3:16 ingrained into your soul. For God so loved the world, he gave his one and only son. If there is a God, I don't think he's happy about climate change. God never spent a whole arvo going nuts and reading on Twitter about how trans men having kids is Orwellian and the end of the Western world. Being anti-gay and anti-trans is just baffling to me. The existence of people who don't subscribe to your narrow framework of how you live your life don't affect you in any way. If you're coping with the meaninglessness of our reality by believing in religion or a god, then yeah, I respect that. In that aspect, I'm a utilitarian. I hope that makes you happy. But if you're coping with the meaninglessness of our reality by attacking people you don't like and using God and Jesus as an easy scapegoat to justify your hateful rhetoric, I can't get behind that. I don't respect you. I don't respect you or that. That's horseshit. I don't think there's gonna be a kingdom of heaven waiting for you if you're wasting everyone's time arguing about race, gender, or sexuality while his creation burns down around us due to climate change. With that said, as much as I have an issue with organized religion, I still have a love for religious iconography. I look at art that comes out about religion and about church, and I think a lot of it is quite beautiful. I like consuming movies about this sort of stuff. I like listening to people talk about their religions and how they compare it with metaphysics and psychology. From paintings to films to games to movies. It's really culturally cool in my opinion, and I know some people disagree with me, but I still think it's a part of my culture. But I don't think it's worth it at the end of the day. I would trade all the religious iconography and art in the world if it meant all the horrible shit in the name of religion would go away. As uncomfortable and shit my brush with organized religion was, I kind of have a soft spot for it. Like I said, I love Christian iconography. I love the aesthetics of cathedrals and churches. As much as I meme about far-right nutcases who run their mouth about the end of Western civilization and the dreaded Mayo side, I don't want those things to happen. I love white people, I love all people. I think as humans we have more in common than we have differences. What I don't like is racist, hateful people and shit ideas. My issues are with people and systems which hold degenerate and destructive ideologies and philosophies. And when I say degenerate, I don't mean degenerate in the Nazi sense of, oh, we need racial purity. When I call someone degenerate, I mean something that is amoral. Homophobia, racism, transphobia, what have you. In Marx's writing, yes, I know I'm using this video to once again talk about Karl Marx. Before any conservative or right winger gets triggered, just relax. Come on, just hear me out, please. Free speech, guys. Don't call me a cultural Marxist in the comments again. I'm actually paid by Oscar the Grouch to mention Marxism in all my videos. I almost have enough money saved up to buy one of those Jeremy Corbyn Mao-adjacent bikes the British media loves talking about. Comment down below if you actually got that reference. Anyway, in Marx's writing, he referred to religion, and specifically Western religion, as a opiate. Religion is the sigh of oppressed creatures, the heart of the heartless world, and the soul of the soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. And let me just say, as a social economic analysis of what Western religion does to people, Uncle Carl is, as usual, right on the money here. I can personally attest to this. The closest experience I can compare being religious to is being high. The bigger systemic issues of the world fade away. You feel good. You feel virtuous, full of love. It's a false sense of happiness and security. Harder for true introspection and self-reflection. With that said, opiums in itself isn't a bad thing by its nature. It can be used sparingly for positive effects. Opiums and opioids can be used in medicine to help old sick people deal with the pain of death. What I'm saying is, take Jesus responsibly. I honestly don't believe that most people who go to church really believe in God or really give a shit about what's written in the Bible. They're just high on belief and they like the sense of community. People who tend to go to church are just normal people who feel alienated by late-stage neoliberal capitalism and have an empty hole of nihilism in their heart that they want to fill. Here on Political YouTube, we automatically ignore religion with our rational skepticism of the unknown. Without definitive evidence, who's to say? Don't get me wrong, the rational skepticism of atheist rhetoric is a fun social allure. It's fun to feel smart, as if you've worked things out. The feeling of having a superior intellect, being so damn rational, is easy. It's so easy to feel like you've cracked the case, woken up to how the world is. Seeing big real world problems and looking for easy solutions. I think a lot of people use the belief of scapegoat to go after and attack people they just personally don't like. It's an argument based in feels, not reals. There's no rational position to be anti-gay. You just don't like it. As much as people try to reframe their language, there's no rational position for being homophobic. And I find all this really unnerving because I think a lot of what's happening with religion nowadays is antithetical to what religion is all about. Old mate Jesus never did that. It's the distinction and juxtaposition between belief versus action. If you want to check out some philosophy that really combines nihilism and religious faith, I gotta recommend Alan Watts. A lot of his stuff was quite formative for me. Alan Watts was a British writer who interpreted and popularized Eastern philosophy for a Western audience. He's kind of like the progenitor of all things weeb. I love his stuff and I will link it in the show notes. Old mate Alan believed everybody is equally a child expression of God in the flesh, living a temporal dream, and at death we will wake up to realize that we were really God the whole time, merely dreaming a dream. He was, while not very politically active and hadn't really had an ideology or philosophy in one way or another, nor left or right, he was a big proponent for societal and self-improvement. He's kind of like the non-garbage Jordan Peterson. Let me share this quote of his that I really adore. It really shows the distinction between the faith and action dichotomy that I brought up before.
It's so curious that the emphasis of Western tradition in religion is primarily upon right belief. Do you believe in the right doctrines? And only secondarily upon right action. Because what you believe is, in Christianity at any rate, far more important than what you do. Because one is saved through faith, not by works.
Western civilization has been a continual evolution upon itself with retrospective amendments and constructions. Religion and church has always been the same. Those who deny otherwise are infuriatingly wrong and annoying. We didn't ask priests to be celibate until the 12th century. Angels that are synonymous with Christian faith weren't even mentioned before the 5th century. It's easy to say this is how things were and are and always should be. But it's hard to acknowledge that some things actually change. Cultures change, that's inevitable. Things change, life progresses. And that's not to say change is compromise. It's hard to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, society will be better. Nothing is static in nature. Belief in religion in itself is not intrinsically or inherently evil. A good example is the current Pope. Okay, what a Chad. So, we're at the tail end of this video. So do I believe in God? In all honesty, I don't care. I jumped from one extreme to another, from belief to nihilism, and a lot of it left me a bit hollow, but I would do it again. I'm sorry if you were hoping for something a little bit more definitive, but it's a loaded question that implies a simple binary. Because what do you mean by God? What do you mean by believe? I believe you can have faith without having organized religion. You can have faith in yourself, faith in others, faith in humanity. I believe you can be a part of a culture and enjoy it while still acknowledging its current and historical malicious elements. You can enjoy art with Christian imagery while acknowledging the fact that that same Christian imagery and rhetoric was used to destroy Aboriginal and Polynesian cultures. While I can't definitively give you an answer to the question if God exists or not, I don't think anyone can say with 100% certainty that he exists or not. Only you can answer that question for yourself. So to answer the question, is religion good for you? Well, in my opinion, religion is good if you make it so. While the question, do you believe in God, can't really be answered, I can definitively say I try my best to act as if he does. I love this quote from Albert Camus. It really gets to the heart of my worldview.
I would rather live my life as if there is a God and die to find out there isn't, than live as if there isn't and to die to find out that there is.
I'm going to talk to you this evening on the subject of the spectrum of love. We know that from time to time there arise among human beings people who seem to exude love as naturally as the sun gives out heat.
In real life, my name is Isaac. While I prefer Zach because it sounds much cooler, my birth name is Isaac. It means laughter in Latin, but my name also comes from the Bible. It's kind of fitting if you know the story of Isaac and his father. I still fondly look back on those days when I was religious, even though they are kind of somewhat tainted now. You don't have to be religious to try and be a good person. We gotta remember, as shit and as horrible as religion can be, and as shit as horrible as it is, it's still part of our culture, it's part of our history, it's who we were and who we came from. What we hate about it is what we hate about human nature, what we hate about ourselves. I'm not a cultural essentialist. I refuse to believe that people are their ideology. I don't want to deny people meaning if they need it. I'm a utilitarian in that aspect. As long as you're not hurting anyone, construct whatever meaning you need in this meaningless existence. Because I think that is the closest thing we have to a universal truth. The search for meaning in a meaningless existence.
There's a war inside my head, and I'm drowning in regret.
G'day guys, sorry this video took very long to go up. I was really scared to post this. I like being personal and honest in my vids. This is basically just, these videos are a way for me to just vent out whatever I'm feeling at that time. They're like stream of consciousness madness. But I feel like while making this one, I kind of opened up way too much. This video went through a lot of rewrites. It's finally at a point where I'm happy with it, and it's done now, and thank fuck this thing, thank you if you made it all the way to the end. Please like the video and comment. Tell me what you think about these subjects. I'm really curious to what people think about religion. I'm always open to a dialogue. Follow me on Twitter at pixel_hipster. That's capital P, capital H, and this underscore. So, one last thing before I go. I just want to give a massive thanks to Tim, Jack, and Lance for lending their sexy voices for this video. Thank you for watching. Thanks guys. Thanks mates. That means a lot to me. Okay, thank you for watching. I am so tired. I've been talking for holy fuck, an hour right now. Okay. Okay, thank you for watching. I hope I see you next time.
I would rather live my life as if there is a God and die to find out there isn't, than live as if there isn't and to die to find out that there is. Albert Camus. Albert Camus. Albert Camus. I would rather live my life as if there is a God and die to find out there isn't, than live as if there is, and to die to find out that there is. Hopefully that's enough variations. I don't know. I'll give you a silly one. I would rather live my life as if there is a God and to die to find out that there isn't, than to live as if there isn't and then to die to find out that there is.